Welcome back to another episode of the Hodge-Cast. Today, I'm joined by the one and only Billy Carson.
Hey, thank you, man. It's an honor. It's an honor to be here. I'm so happy that you came all the way across from the UK and you're on this podcast track, and I'm glad to be a part of it.
Well, what a way to start it. You're my initial one of the US tour, Billy. So, wow. And I think I said to you off camera I was so giddy this morning because I've been a fan of your work for many, many years and been down some deep old rabbit holes with your content. So the fact that we've got a good couple of hours now to have a conversation, I'm so psyched, I'm ready. Yeah. And Fort Lauderdale, beautiful place. First time in Florida.
Wow.
So in the UK, you kind of had this thing where if you had money, you went to Orlando, Florida, Disneyland.
Gotcha.
If you were sort of working class, you go to Euro Disneyland Paris. Right. I went to neither, so I don't know if that says a lot about me. But love Florida so far. I've spent all yesterday in Fort Lauderdale and was in Miami as well and up here. So
Beautiful, man.
I don't really know where to start, so I'm just going to dive right in there and let's talk all things ancient Egypt. Let's talk about the pyramids.
Let's do it.
So what's the latest on the discoveries down there to your understanding?
Well, the latest, man, is that these scans that were done by Filippo Biondi and Armando May and their team of scientists really are revealing true underground labyrinths that exist in real life. And how I know they exist in real life is my business partner in Egypt is an Egyptologist. His name is Mohammed Ibrahim. And every year I do tours in Egypt. Sometimes I do 2 tours in 1 year. Like in 2026, this year I'll be doing 2 tours. This man grew up in the old Egypt. No electricity, no running cars, waiting 2 or 3 weeks for fresh groceries to be brought into his area because they lived in a very harsh area out there in terms of like growing crops. We're talking about old school, would play around the pyramid structures as a child and had been in many of the underground labyrinths that many of the homegrown Egyptologists know exist. And he just happens to be one now that's become the top guide in Egypt, period, point blank. He's number one. And he's been in some areas underground that are so vast and so long that his 300-meter laser pen can't even see the end of the tunnel. Matter of fact, the Egyptologists and the archaeologists, mainstream, they call them avenues. They don't even call them tunnels or holes in the ground. That's how massive these underground areas are. Some of them lead from Giza all the way to the Ziggurat of Ur in Iraq, hundreds of miles away.
Wow. Because I know there was quite a lot of, quote for the audio listeners, controversy around the scans. So it sounds like they've literally only scratched the surface, really, when they're saying 2 kilometers deep. So what does this tell us now? How does this unpack things further for us?
Well, what it's telling us is there's a new method that can be used when you do a SAR scan. This synthetic aperture radar scan in a 10 gigahertz bandwidth will give you the ability to penetrate the Earth with vibrations. And if you can transmit those minute vibrations that the Earth is making in that area back to a supercomputer, you can process that data, and it'll give you imagery based on solid and empty spaces. Now, I've been at lectures with both of these gentlemen on the team, Filippo and Armando May. Matter of fact, I wrote the foreword to Armando's May new book. But I've been at conferences with them several times now in 2025. And I've watched their science, I've watched their presentations and lectures. They have scanned well-known areas that already exist. And we know what's down there to compare what we see from what we know and what we have now seen underneath Giza. So I'm understanding now that their technology is pretty damn accurate. And so when you can scan areas repetitively over and over again using the same exact technique and repeat that experiment and get the same result, you have something that's factual.
Mm-hmm. Which is frustrating because, as you've just identified, it's credible tech.
Yeah.
It's been proven to work before. Why, again, is the mainstream putting such a block on? I understand it's a protected landmark. It's one of the last remaining wonders of the ancient world. Mm-hmm. But I'm not saying necessarily, dig it up or anything of that nature. But why do they constantly push back?
Yeah.
even with, I mean, it's always, we need more evidence, and every time more evidence comes to the surface, there's a pushback.
There are people behind the scenes that don't want the world to know how super advanced these ancient cultures really were. Because if we truly understood how advanced they were, it would completely destroy our understanding and perspective of this current version of mankind being at the pinnacle of civilization. It would destroy religion in a heartbeat. It will destroy the fact that they're trying to say, we hope we can find alien life 20 million light years away on some, class 3 planet or whatever. It destroys all those concepts that they've been pushing on us, all those lies and all that oppression and obfuscation of information. It would literally unfold and open the past like a rose petal opening, in the dawn. And if that happens, just like the rose petal opens, the human mind will also open. We'll begin to ask more questions. We will begin to seek and look for more answers. We will begin to realize that the stories that we've been given over many, many generations, even eons, have not been as accurate as we thought. And then we'll begin to rephrase our perception of reality. And once we do that as a collective group, we're going to realize we don't need these people that are making the rules. We actually don't need them. And that's their biggest fear.
Yeah, no, I think you've hit the nail on the head with that one, because they have a stranglehold on things and how much they don't want to leak. And it's so obvious now. It's very, it's almost like frustrating. Zahi Hawass went on a big tour around the States, didn't he? And I think Rogan said that was one of the worst interviews he's ever done. So, and it was truly awful.
It was awful.
So
laughable.
It just makes them look. I think they'd have more respect if they was a bit more open-minded. Instead of this dogmatic shutdown straight off the bat. It's okay. You've provided a bit of evidence. Tell me more. I want to know more about that. I'm not saying it's 100% accurate, but we can look into it together and find out.
Isn't that what science is all about?
Exactly, Billy.
Science is about exploration, exploring hypotheses, testing results. Sometimes finding out those results aren't accurate or can't be duplicatable. So let's test again. Let's research again. Let's question again until we find deeper and better answers. It's not about just saying, this is the way it is and this is the way it's going to be forever. That's not real science. That's dogma.
And speaking of dogma, because I've never really understood this one, why is it in the mainstream they say that the Great Pyramids are tombs? Where has that originated from? Is that just, again, dogma from the mainstream, or
more dogma and distraction to get mankind to automatically, they understand word salad, to automatically connect the pyramids, which are megalithic, magnificent structures built with advanced technology, and just relegate them to being nothing but a giant tombstone. So they want to take away the importance of it, the impactfulness of what they actually are and what they really truly mean to mankind and what they meant to our ancestors, and just diminish it into, it's just a big tombstone, it's nothing. So all of a sudden the human mind, because somebody in quote unquote power said it's nothing, it's a tombstone, our mind instantly shuts off, stores that information in the back closet somewhere in the back, and we just, it's nothing. We forget all about it. And we continue on in our day. And anytime anybody brings anything up about the pyramid, the government said, or the leader said, or the teacher said it was just a big tombstone. So nothing to worry about, nothing to see here.
Yeah, that's what we got told in school. I mean, I always thought, even as a kid, and I was obsessed with history as a kid, and I always thought the timeline was off. Now I think it's completely off in another stratosphere. But certainly as a kid, I always thought this doesn't add up. I've never been to Egypt, so probably need to jump on one of your tours. But I'm told off various people, when you go inside the Great Pyramids, it's almost like extra-terrestrial. It certainly doesn't feel like a tomb. I think you've been in the sarcophagus that's in there. Yeah. So.
I've been in the sarcophagus. I've climbed up the shafts.
Okay.
I've gone up through the Grand Gallery, which is not made for any size of a human being.
No.
You're walking inside of an actual machine. And you get the sense and understanding of that once you get inside. You begin to realize this is a machine. This isn't for people. And when you're crawling through these shafts and these areas and you're bent over and you're almost bear crawling in some places, and you got to get down. For me, I'm so tall, I got to get down on my knees to crawl into the king's chamber area because the opening is very low to the ground, maybe only 3 feet off the ground. And you get inside and you stand up and you look around, you realize a machine. The sarcophagus the thing that they're claiming is a sarcophagus in there is a rose granite box. Now, this rose granite box does not in any way, shape, or form resemble any other sarcophagus that I've seen anywhere throughout Egypt or any museum or online. It's a rose granite box. It looks like a storage box. It holds something. It would have held something. And it's not that big. Truth be told, when I get inside of it, my knees have to bend a little bit because my feet are hitting the base. So if a 6'4" man can't really fit in there comfortably, then what does that tell you? Most likely it probably wasn't a sarcophagus. Where's the lid? Where's all these megalithic lids that we've seen everywhere all throughout Egypt, in all the tombs, but all of a sudden in here, no lid. You can clearly see it's not set for an actual lid. It's set to hold something inside. So I began to look at the dimensions of the actual sarcophagus, or the box. I call it a box, the rose granite box. And I began to realize this location in the king's chamber was offset. It used to be, in my opinion, more dead center of the king's chamber, with it aligning perfectly with the apex if you were to draw a line through solid block to get to the top. But somehow you can see these skid marks or the movement marks on the ground, that this thing was moved into an area slightly in front of a wall on the side of the Grand Gallery. At some point, it was moved and shifted to that spot, which is bizarre, which maybe even broke the technology. But you can also see that the dimensions are the exact dimensions of the Ark of the Covenant as spoken about in the biblical text. So when you take those dimensions and match them up to that box, it would fit perfectly inside. And we know that there were Arks of the Covenant throughout Egypt, and there were temples that used to house those Arks in these particular crystal diorite altars throughout Egypt. They called them a Holy of Holies in these different sections of certain temples, and there was one inside the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid.
Wow. That blows your mind, doesn't it? I want to circle back to the Ark of the Covenants and ask you a few questions about that. Mm-hmm. But given the new findings underneath the labyrinth underneath the pyramids, and based on what we think that it was used for, does this now unpack a bit more? Because are you in the same camp as Christopher Dunn, power plant, or have you
power plant?
But you're in the power plant, okay?
Man, the living legend Christopher Dunn. Shout out to Christopher Dunn. Great human being. I've had the pleasure of interviewing him several times over the years, and finally got to meet him in person a few months ago at an event. We spoke at the same event, and man, I'm doing a lecture, and I look out at the crowd, and I see Christopher Dunn is sitting in my lecture. Man, I almost passed out.
That would be pretty awesome, yeah.
I almost passed out, and then he gave me like an ovation for my lecture. Me and him are on the same vibration and frequency in terms of what we believe the pyramid was used for. It's a multifunctional stone computer plus a power generation system. It had multiple purposes. These people were masters at stone, masters at masonry, and masters of understanding how to manipulate the current environment. If you travel to another planet, right, and whether it's aliens or whether it's even us traveling, maybe human beings come from another star system. Maybe we created a breakaway civilization on Earth. Maybe it's us that's here in the past, right? Hypothetically. Either way you want to see it, doesn't matter. The point is, if you're traveling through space to create these breakaway civilizations and you stumble across a planet, usually if the planet is not already to a certain level of advancement, there's going to be no industry there for you to start producing things. There's going to be no factories and people you can hire as employees and train them to make these widgets and so forth and power systems. You have to become a master at manipulating the existing environment where you're going, which is exactly what we're doing with our missions to Mars. We are going to become masters at manipulating the Martian environment. We're going to extract hydrogen from the water in the soil. We're going to convert that hydrogen into energy. We're going to extract the oxygen atoms to use that for breathing. All the things that they've done with the pyramids and these other structures, same thing. So it's in my opinion, yes, definitely a power generation system, also a communications device. Well, you look at the way that the Queen's Chamber is positioned, and look how the water used to flow underneath the Great Pyramid back in time. Some of it was positioned to move up into the pyramid structure and down into the Queen's Chamber, which operated just like a hydrogen filter. It would extract the hydrogen atoms through electrolysis and push those into another chamber for energy use as well as communication. The shafts would shoot out hydrogen frequencies toward the stars on specific alignments. And why hydrogen? Today, right now in 2026, if we want to communicate with ET, which we're trying to do on a daily basis, astrophysicists are consistently sending out hydrogen frequencies into space with information encoded on it to try to find a message back from ET. And I believe they were doing that all the way back in ancient times. And why those star systems? Sirius, A, B, and C, Aldebaran, Orion, and all these alignments, Ursa Minor, Ursa Major, these alignments, I believe there are maybe potentially our cousins are there. Other breakaway civilizations of planets orbiting those stars, and we maybe have been sending reports out to those star systems as to what's going on with this civilization here on Earth.
Wow. And when you unpack it like that, Billy, it's more plausible than what the mainstream feed does anyway. Yeah. So just going back, so I actually mentioned Mars there. What's your, because not really my wheelhouse this, but I love hearing other people's opinions on space. Do you think that's possible? Do you think we can get to a point where we can terraform Mars and be able to inhabit that?
We can live on Mars today.
Okay.
The REMS unit data, the Mars Global Surveyor data, and all the rover data has come back, even the Viking data. We know now through the data that's publicly available right from the nasa.gov website that anyone can download, there is oxygen there. Now, not a lot of oxygen, but at the lower levels. If you stay low and close to the surface or beneath the surface, you can acclimate to it, but you'll breathe perfectly fine. It'll be just like I was at 17,000 feet in the Andes in the beginning of 2025, hiking 105 miles. I took some people on tour, and it was tough. Every footstep felt like 1,000 pounds, but we did it, right? It'll be the same equivalent being on Mars. There's an acclimation time period. Also, they discovered that the oxygen is being replaced. So some is leaking into space because of the weakened atmosphere or the weakened, the atmosphere and the way that the planet was damaged. The ozone layer, but it's being replaced, but by what? Also, there's a lot of methane being generated at the surface and then resonating up into the higher levels of atmosphere. What creates methane on Earth? Life. They discovered billions of tons of liquid water on Mars now, so it's not a secret that Mars is a water planet, and there's still a lot of water there. Even lakes they've discovered and made press releases about the lake, so it's not a cold, dry rock anymore. At the equator in the summer, the highest temperature recorded 99 degrees. It's not 99 degrees here today, and we're in Florida. That's warmer than we are right now today. So there's warmth there as well. Are there huge swings in temperature? Absolutely. Are there huge swings in temperature in the Sahara Desert? In Las Vegas, Nevada? Right now, it's 40 degrees in Las Vegas, Nevada today. Well, but in a couple of weeks, it'll be 110. So this is not out of the norm. There are also other molecules in the atmosphere, breathable gases, just like we have here on Earth. And then they discovered magnetic fields. They found several isolated magnetic fields, which are phenomenal for protecting DNA against solar radiation. And then they also saw that Mars is spinning on its axis at the almost exact precise same speed as Earth, just slightly faster. And a Martian day is about 23.5 hours. Now, what's interesting is this speed on its axis and the movement of itself around the sun creates something called bow shock. And that bow shock bends the cosmic rays around the planet, preventing most of them from getting to the surface, allowing DNA to thrive on the surface of Mars. So in my opinion, Mars is definitely a habitable planet now. Can it be made better by terraforming? Absolutely. But I believe they've been creating a breakaway civilization there secretly for quite some time. My personal opinion, I'm part of a group called the United Family of Anomaly Hunters. And we've downloaded over 1 million images from these space agencies, analyzed them, processed them, scanned them, and spent countless hours looking through each and every centimeter of these images. And we've cataloged over 60,000 anomalies in the last 15 years. Things that are out of place objects that should not be there. things that begin to resemble stuff that we see on Earth, like rundown ancient structures, brickwork, walls that look collapsed, mud flow covering up what we don't know exactly what they are, but objects that look like they were intelligently made, and also some things that look like they might even be alive today. I know that sounds crazy based on what we've been told and programmed, but again, once you realize that Mars is habitable and there's oxygen and water, there's not a lot more that you need. I just think that it's been suppressed and held back from us.
I mean, you say it sounds crazy. I'm sure to some of the listeners it will. I've kind of reached this point, and I mean, I'm only 34. I've reached this point in my life where I don't think anything sounds crazy anymore because so much stuff has become true and debunked. So just hearing you articulate that, Billy, I can get on board with that. So, yeah. I mean, what is the likelihood they're going to find? You mentioned those structures there. If they found something very similar to kind of like the pyramids, not necessarily across the earth, but obviously with Egypt, because then would that tie in with potential, as you mentioned, communication, maybe to Mars as well? Do you think that's possible, or have they potentially already uncovered something?
Oh, there's a lot there. The images are all available. So one of the things that drew me in right away when I discovered the Mars anomalies, my first time surfing on Mars, looking through some Spirit rover and Opportunity rover data, I saw objects that looked like the same type of walls that you would see in Peru, right? And I'm like, this stonework is the same stonework as in Peru. That's what took me in deeper into researching ancient civilizations and digging deeper to see if there was any connection to this Mars, the god of war, and why did they call it the god of war? And in that text, I began to find out in the Sumerian text, in Akkadian and Babylonian, they claimed that people were living on Earth and Mars, the same race of people, but they had their counterparts living on Mars, and they were running two concurrent civilizations simultaneously, building them out both at the same time, and using and harvesting resources from both planets Earth and Mars simultaneously. That, for me, was mind-blowing. There was even almost a big war on Earth because the Igigi, which were the working class Anunnaki beings, they felt like they were being enslaved, and they descended from Mars to Earth and were going to attack Anu, Enki, and Enlil in a place called Adam's Calendar in South Africa. And this is in the Epic of Atra-Hasis, which is located in the British Museum. And this story is so magnificent, it really opens your eyes to say, who has time to sit back 7,000 years ago and write a sci-fi movie on tablets using cuneiform and a stylus and wet clay when you're supposed to be hunting, gathering, protecting the village, making sure your family has food to eat and things like that, and you got a safe place to sleep for the night? Nobody has time to write a sci-fi movie. So I have to say that their information is possibly as close to the truth as we're going to ever get.
Well, you mentioned in the sci-fi, I mean, I've always been of the belief, because how some people have the creative cognitive function to write a sci-fi movie. Is it because potentially there was something that was always there that we've adopted from our ancestors, perhaps? I don't know if that's something that could be plausible. A
lot of these instances of ancient times, the reason why it's all coming out now, yes, we're all great researchers, and we've dug deep, and I've traveled. I've been around the world 23 times, and Randall Carson travels nonstop, and Graham Hancock he's dedicated his entire life to this. So you can't take away from the research. But why did we go out in the first place? It's because we begin to remember. There's a remembrance. It's almost as if you get this urge that's undeniable that you can't fight it. And you've got to go find out why you feel that way about a certain thing. And you spend everything you've got, all the money you have. I spent so much of my money and all my time. I spent 9 months in hotels one year.
Wow.
Right? And I mean, just to be out there and to get the answers to questions that I'm asking myself. It's a remembrance. It's a form of genetic memory being passed down, maybe even through the epigenetic memories that we now know exist in real gene therapy and biology. And in some ways, some of us maybe are remembering a little stronger than others, and it puts this burning desire in us to try to find the answers, to confirm or get affirmation as to what we feel we already know.
And I mean, it probably sounds like a silly question, this, but do you feel like you're further forward now with everything, with all the travelling, all the discoveries that you've found?
Yeah.
Have you been, because obviously Graham's been subject to a hell of a lot of backlash from people. I'm sure, obviously, public figure that you are, Billy, you get resentment from. I always say you're not being. If you've not got haters, you're not successful. That's how it goes.
That's true.
But have you had it to the lengths Graham's had on your side?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I've been attacked. I've been attacked. Everything from Flat Earth Society attacked.
The flat earthers have come after you too.
Oh, they were the first ones years ago, and I didn't. They offered me money. I didn't want to take the money, and then they sent their online millions to attack my posts and attack my, virtually attack the comments of my people that were commenting on my posts and so forth. And then death threats started coming in, which I posted the death threats online, and I had to report them to the FBI, and and that kind of died out for a little while. Then it kind of came back again, and then I had people trying to dox me online, and then after that I had the attack from the religious folk, religious zealots tried to take me down in 2024, but it didn't work. Well, people like us, like Graham Hancock, Randall Carlson, myself, it's not about us. We've done so much work and so much investigation and research, and we've done so much. Committed so much sacrifice that we have put a great amount of people out here that are nothing but copies of us. So what is forbidden knowledge? Forbidden knowledge is not Billy Carson. Forbidden knowledge is a community. Forbidden knowledge is global. Graham Hancock's global. Randall Carlson's global. You take one of us down, another head pops right up, because that's what we built. It's not all about us. Each one of us and many of the other great researchers that are out there in these fields have put in so much effort, energy, and work into this that you almost just make us a martyr. I don't think they realize that. And forbidden knowledge is an entire concept. So taking me down or trying to embarrass me offline, it's just never going to work, because somebody will fill in right behind me. I've done a great job, I feel, in building leaders. I don't call my followers, and they'll tell you, when I get to a certain benchmark in following or subscribers, I always put leaders on the post. And the reason why is because it's not about building followers. I'm out here building leaders. People that are going to think for themselves, research for themselves, get answers for themselves, and get confirmation for themselves. And when you build leaders, it can never be stopped.
And that's good, because I think, everyone's got a lifespan, a time expectancy. Obviously, Graham and Randall, they're getting on a little bit now, for putting it politely, and you want people to be able to come along and pick up where you guys have left off and continue to drive it forward, because fundamentally I think it's fair to say you're driven by the truth and trying to identify what's factual. And I can only respect people like yourself, Billy, for doing that. Plus, I love the content Forbidden Knowledge puts out. I get my little fix on that. If ever I'm feeling down, the gym workout's not paid off. So let's see what Billy Carson's uploaded today. So so thank you from me.
Thank you.
Let's circle back to the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah.
So I want to kind of ask you two questions here. What do you believe its purpose was, and does it still exist? Is it still in Ethiopia now?
Okay, great question. The Ark of the Covenant purpose is a machine, a multifunctional machine. Again, these ancients really understood how to create multifunctionality out of a device. In other words, it would always have multiple purposes. It could have healing purposes, defense purposes, energetic purposes, power supply. I believe it had all of those things. Okay. The reason why it had to be handled in a certain way was because it might have even been radioactive or extremely highly electromagnetic. And when you look at the type of clothing, the gloves and the rubber boots and everything else they had to wear, the breastplates and everything they had to put on to handle this thing, just to handle it safely, you realize that there was something energetic there that could kill you. And some people who didn't have on the right clothing, who touched it, they were instantly shocked to death. So there's something there. So even in the time when they carried this thing, when Moses was carrying this object through the desert with his tribes that followed him, there was a war brewing, and this thing was able to, basically not only feed them, but even protect them against an oncoming potential enemy. So it was this incredible power source. It wasn't just one, though. There were many Arks of the Covenant. This is where a lot of people don't understand. That was just one of maybe a dozen. Okay, maybe one for each one of the tribes. The one that was in Ethiopia, that one made it onto a documentary. I forget how many years ago now. It might have been 12, 13 years ago. And as soon as that documentary aired and they revealed that the Ark of the Covenant was here at this particular church in Ethiopia, and it was being guarded by these elderly men, it disappeared a month later. It was gone. So it's not even there anymore. It was taken away. But that's just, again, one of them. There are some of them, I believe, potentially, some of the high-level elites could have them. There could be one underneath the Vatican. The U.S. military-industrial complex could have one in one of those underground bases, one of those DUMBs, those deep underground military bases. It could be one in Area 52. 51's closed, so 52 now. But there are several of them that existed. It wasn't just one.
Yeah, because I don't really buy into the narrative that if there was a device or an object with such power, that would just be left alone for religious reasons.
Yeah.
Of course, the military or NASA or whomever, Area 52, will want to get their hands on that, no doubt.
Well, I'll tell you what happened real quick. So there have been several scientists and professors that have recreated the Ark of the Covenant based on the instructions in the biblical text. One scientist named Dr. Hodgson out of Canada, and another professor out of an American university. I forget the exact university, but you can find them on YouTube. They reproduced the Ark of the Covenant, and both of them had the same results. Extremely high levels of energy. The one in the university, they had to shut it off. It was drawing too much power. So these things are creating an incredible amount of power, generating and pulling a lot of power from the grid when they were turned on. So that proves my theory or my hypothesis that these were energy devices.
See, what I like about you, Billy, is you always reference something. I mean, I read the Emerald Tablets again on the flight over. Yeah. And I've not brought my copy with me today, annoyingly, because I was going to get you to sign it. But you're going to be in the UK soon.
I'll sign one and give it to you here.
Oh, okay. Even better. But yeah, what I love and what you did reference in the book and on all the interviews is you always give links. You always give, go check it out yourself. And that gives you more credibility. It gives you more substance. So, but yeah, going back onto the Ark of the Covenant. So I've always been, I mean, I'm agnostic myself. I wouldn't consider myself a full-blown atheist. I'm agnostic in a sense. I don't know. I'm one of those, I work towards facts. Show me kind of evidence, show me something that is legit. And I can't really buy into, and I don't mean to offend anyone by saying this, but I can't buy into any of the let's go with the word mainstream religions. So that's why I consider myself agnostic. What's your take? What? I suppose this is a double-barrel question. So, what's your take on the Ark of the Covenant in terms of the religious aspects? I need a coffee. The religious aspects, and what's your take on just religion as a concept? And I'll unpack that a bit more, actually, just to kind of put a bit more meat on the bone. So, my take with religion is we accept that ancient Greece, ancient Egypt, the Anunnaki, that is what gets called mythology. We call it that. But once upon a time, people believed that these deities existed. But yet when you come to, the monotheistic religions, Judaism, Islam, Christianity, and then of course all the other ones, we've got to take that as gospel. Why is that?
Well, that's an agenda. It's all agenda-based. It's an agenda-based, it's an agenda that's based on wanting to control and dominate masses. They found out that if you understand the information in this text and how you can wield the power of the tongue utilizing this information, you can make the masses bend to their knees and you can have them doing whatever you want them to do. If you can keep them draped in fear, doubt, self-hatred, and hatred towards others based on their beliefs or non-beliefs, that you can really control and create this low, dark energy field that you can kind of almost stir like a pot of soup. And when they learned that and realized that, they said, this is how we want to run. We can take over the entire planet utilizing this technique. That's what the Book of Eli was about, that movie with Denzel Washington. One guy was on the hunt for just one book. He just needed that one copy of the Bible because he realized in that post-apocalyptic era, if he had one copy of the Bible, with his knowledge and his capability of how to wield his power using those words, he can take over the entire planet. He would be then the God of Earth, which was his thing. But Eli had memorized it, the text, and it was in his brain, so it wasn't in the book anymore, right? But that's just a metaphor for what's really happening on this planet. The religious systems are designed to enslave, to hold back. And it would be the same thing as envisioning, religion would be the same thing as envisioning a fish inside of a fish bowl, and then you put the fish bowl in the ocean. Spirituality would be a fish swimming in the ocean, and says, hey, why is there a fish with a fishbowl in my ocean? I'll just keep swimming through the ocean. And so there's this restriction that's placed on you with religious concepts and dogma, whereas spirituality really releases you and frees you. It makes you realize that you can forgive yourself, you can love yourself, you can love others, and you can have a direct connection to the divine. And also, it makes you realize that you are already divine and you are already eternal. You and I are both sitting here, and you say you're 32?
34.
34, okay. I'm 54, okay.
You look fantastic.
Oh, thank you, sir. You too. So I'm 20 years older than you. However, I'm not really 20 years older than you because our bodies are both made up of atoms, aren't they? So these atoms that make up our body, they've been here since the beginning of time. So we estimate roughly in astrophysics about 13.5 billion years, the atoms that making our bodies up were already here. So in actuality, you and I are both 13.5 billion years old. We have no difference in age. And if you had gotten married next year and had a baby the year after, that baby is still 13.5 billion years old.
Wow.
There's a different way of seeing things. And I think that's what spirituality allows you to unlock, the ability to be a free thinker and unlock these parameters that have been placed on us and also get out of the dominant frequency. Because like I say all the time, when you're born, you're given a name, a race, and a religion, and you spend your whole life defending a false identity. You don't even know who you are. So when people start asking you what you believe in and you start saying it, regurgitating it, you're giving off the dominant frequency that was forced on you like a coat of armor from somebody else. So when you start to perceive the world, you're giving off somebody else's perception, not your own perception. And when you begin to answer questions, you're answering it from other people's perceptions, not your own. Until a person can break free and begin to realize who they truly are, then they can begin to obtain and hold their own dominant frequency, gain their own perception and perspective on reality, be able to freely ask questions without fear and look for their own answers.
Wow. Again, that's a regular theme for this interview. I mean, I love the fishbowl analogy. I've never heard that one before. But I mean, I suppose you can, look at some modern religions to echo what you've just said there. I mean, Scientology, I don't want to go down that rabbit hole with you, but that in itself, you can see how that gets dominated. It's almost cult-like, and the way that's had that dogmatic approach. Mm-hmm. That's no different than Christianity, no different than, the Church of England, especially, Islam. They all seem to follow the same common thread, really, in terms of their approach on things. Yeah. Sort of going, you mentioned there with regards to spirituality, I suppose I've got to ask you, what's your take on, and I suppose this is an open-ended question, but I'll see how you handle it, Billy. I'm sure you'll articulate some masterpiece now. But what's your take on sort of life as a whole? What do you think? Why do you think we were created? Where do you think we go when we die?
Great question. Well, I feel like I can answer that question decently since I did die in 2024.
Okay.
I died in a hospital down the street from this house.
Wow.
I died in a hospital. I had a severe case of pneumonia. I was taking people on tour in Turkey. I think I had 48 people on that tour with me. And I came down with this high fever. It ended up being about 105-degree fever.
Wow.
And I'm like, these people flew from all over the world to see me and to be on this tour. So I'm not going to cancel the tour and tell them I got to go home or go to a hospital. I just figured, it's got to be maybe I got that global pandemic finally, because I had never gotten sick with that. And I'm thinking maybe I finally got this. I'll turn the corner. I'll be okay. I'll fight through this. And I just got worse and worse. And by the end of the tour, I lost 28 pounds.
Wow.
In 2 weeks. Got back to the United States, went to the hospital. They admitted me instantly. That same night, my blood cell count was trending towards 40. I was going into sepsis and organ failure, and I died in the hospital that night. And I crossed over 3 times that night. The first 2 times I went over and came back. And the third time I was there. I was gone there. And I was traveling around this incredible, serene place. And I was floating over these jungles. My feet never touched the ground the whole time I was there. But I did have feet and I had hands. So I knew that I had a body. And when I tell you it was 8K, forget 4K. It was so crisp and clear. It was the most clear vision. I had never seen anything so colorful and so crisp and clear in my life. And I saw this clearing in this forest, and I thought about wanting to go down there, and I was just there. It was no traveling there. It was like at the speed of thought. But again, even though I was down there, my feet never touched the ground. And then something started flipping faces of hominids in front of me like a flip book. It was going so fast. but there were thousands of faces. And I don't even know what the meaning of this was, or are these all the hominids that were on Earth or in the universe? Or there were thousands of faces of people from all different types of hominid styles. And it just kept going and going and going. And I was like, oh my God. And then I got this feeling that I can just stay here. And when I got that feeling like, maybe I can just stay here, I heard voices telling me, and it's hard to say they were voices because that might be even a weird way to say it because they weren't specifically voices like you can, there was an understanding that was
like
coming to me.
Like an abstract type.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was like, you can stay here or you can go back. But if you go back, it's going to be hard. And I chose to go back. And as soon as I said I can go back, I literally was back in my body and I could hear the heart monitor. But they thought I was still gone. And I can hear it going, boop, 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 beep. And it started going faster and faster and faster. Then I was back. And I was like, oh my goodness, I was really gone. I was gone. But I can tell you that from my perspective now, that transition is so smooth and so incredible that there's nothing to fear about death at all. You literally just transfer from one dimension into another. Where I would have gone beyond that space that I was in, I'm not quite sure. But where I was tranquil, peaceful. I didn't see any people there, but it felt like an explorer's paradise. Maybe that's something my brain created for me or whatever. I don't know. But it was very, very nice. And I felt like I could have stayed. When I came back, it was hard. When I came back, that's when I had to face a vicious online attack that lasted for about 5 months. And I faced a lot of issues within the company and within marriage. So it was this huge battle as soon as I got back. It was like so prophesied in this vision that I had when I crossed over. So now the meaning of life itself for me is the main mission that I've been able to gain from all of this is our mission is to bring heaven to earth. Mm-hmm. I think that people are waiting to die so that they can live. I think that's the wrong way of seeing it. That's what they want us to believe. And the people that are telling us to wait to die so you can live are the ones that are making their paradise here on earth while they're here. They've got the paradise set up for generations in trust funds, but they're telling everyone else, you got to die so you can get to this magical place. And I think the ultimate experiment, because I feel like we're living in an experiment. I think that we're living in a fractal holographic matrix of light. And that doesn't take anything away from spirituality or religion or anything else. I'm just saying the method used for this creation, as all the ancient indigenous cultures agree that we're living in a creation, the method used, in my opinion, is a fractal holographic matrix. And in this matrix, we're part of this grand experiment. And the experiment that I understand from my perspective is the grand architect of this is looking to see how many millions of civilizations can exist within this one universe. How many of those millions of universes will turn into an advanced civilization, get past the nuclear age? How many of them will awaken past a religious zealot age? How many of them will obtain a high level of spirituality? How many of them will create a golden age, which is heaven on earth? And that could be the total experiment. Now, if you look at ancient principles like the Hermetic principles, which used to be the ancient Kemetic principles back pre-dynastic era, they start talking about as above, so below. Mm-hmm. If you look at the universe as a universal mind, and you zoom out in computer modeling, you can see that the way the universe is formulated and created with clusters of galaxies, they look like the neurons inside of a human brain. And now if you collapse that down into from the macro to the micro, look at us, and let's take an example of what we're doing here. Our mind is encased in darkness, just like the universal mind. But the mind has friends, and it says to its friends, sight, hearing, smelling, touch, taste, all the sensory perception, go out and collect me some data. So your sensory perception system, which are your friends, go out and collect information. They touch, they smell, they hear, they taste, they see. They don't understand the data particularly, but they transmit it back to the brain. The brain sorts it out and projects a hologram as what we think is going on outside. And we navigate this matrix based on a holographic projection from collected data. It gives us a perception of reality. How do we extrapolate this realm that we're living in, and how do we navigate it? Now, that's on the micro. Expand that to the macro back now. Let's go back and reverse engineer this. On the larger scale, the universal mind, it has friends. Those friends are every single living atom, because atoms are alive, that exist throughout the entire known universe, including the atoms that make us up, in my opinion, the universe itself is living subjectively through you and me and everyone else that exists and everything that even exists. Even the atoms in this microphone are alive. And it's experiencing life subjectively from every perception of the reality in the third dimension to understand what is it like to be here in the third dimension. So I think that the universe as a whole itself is experiencing life through us, just as we are experiencing life through our sensory perception system.
As you were talking there, well, first of all, thanks for sharing that story with you. You know, I'm glad to hear you've come back from that. I'm glad to hear that you essentially no longer fear death. You've got your outlook and your objectives, and I'm all for that, Billy. So good for you, man. But as you were talking though, there's quite a lot of overlap with, and this is good overlap, some of the stuff David Icke talks about, which I know you're doing something with him in the UK later on this year. So you're kind of big on frequencies, I guess. So you mentioned how does that sort of translate? So I suppose that I'm trying to articulate this is we get given a lifespan, the human lifespan. Is this sort of like a soul that you're describing here that lives on through the consciousness and goes on to another realm? Or
my perception, the way that I see it, and some people might agree or not agree, it's okay. I believe that the human avatar body, we're living in an avatar, just like the movie Avatar. They got it right in a lot of ways. The avatar would be nothing without the soul. The soul comes to inhabit the avatar. The spark of life happens when the sperm enters into the egg. And that sperm isn't a random sperm. People think it's just, oh, this one made it through. No, that one didn't just make it through. That one was allowed to come in because we found out in genetics that there's this communication going on between the sperm and the egg, and the frequency and vibration have to be just right. And at that time that they merge, there's a spark. That's when the soul enters into this avatar body at the beginning of the gestation period. Now, when the soul is here, the soul is energetically connected to your spirit, which is in a higher dimension. Your higher self, we always say the higher self, you can hear yourself talking to yourself and so forth. That's your higher self. And we know now that the brain, through the Brain Institute, the human brain connects to 11 dimensions. And then Michio Kaku, completely separate research, came out and said years ago that his team of researchers discovered through mathematical models that the universe is at least 11 dimensions. And when they try to make it larger than 11, it collapses back down to 11. So we have two separate researchers, one researching the brain and the mind and one researching the universe, saying 11. So I believe that our higher selves are existing in perceptions of reality, maybe even higher than the third. This higher version of ourselves, this higher super multidimensional being that exists, and we're connected to it energetically, maybe tethered to it in some strange kind of way. So there's two versions of us, actually three: the spirit, the soul, and then the body. And I think that's why we can separate ourselves from our bodies. We can separate ourselves from our thoughts. You can actually get to a point where you can become the observer of your thoughts. We all can be the observer of our thoughts if we realize that and bring awareness to the fact that we're not our thoughts, we are the observer of our thoughts. This is how behaviors are created. How do you become a good person and not continue to make the same mistakes? Because you observe your thoughts and your actions and you correct yourself in your own mind. Because why? Because you can separate yourself from yourself. You can see yourself from a higher dimension to make those corrections to your subconscious. And so that's what's really going on. We're really incredible multidimensional beings that are directly connected, almost like a chakra system, to every dimension within the known universe.
Do you think that's why, sometimes we get levels of deja vu, sixth sense? Is that, again, just maybe frequencies? There's been a little blip in the, I just had a thought there, which I've never experienced that thought before, but it's just come into my mind.
Yeah, we get downloads and everything. They discovered that higher than the third dimension, fourth and all the way up, you can see the past, present, and future simultaneously.
Well,
if you remember the movie Interstellar, he slips out of this spaceship, it falls apart, and he falls into something called a tesseract. A tesseract is a fourth dimensional hypercube. In ancient times, it's called Metatron's cube. Meta? They got that. They didn't make that up. They got that from ancient texts. Oh. And so in Metatron's cube, it's a fourth dimensional hypercube. He's able to see his house. And in his house, he can see his daughter in different rooms, but in each room, she's a different age. right? So he's able to see the past, present, and future simultaneously, which is what the perception of reality would be if we were higher dimensional beings. We have the power now in the third because in the first dimension, which is the line, we can intersect with the line on a piece of paper. We can even erase part of the line, so we can alter the first dimension. The second dimension, we can draw connected lines, and we can draw a house. We can draw a staircase or a closet in a house. And because we're in the third dimension, we can manipulate that drawing. We can even look into every room of that two-dimensional house because we're in the third. Now, imagine the same thing is available to somebody in the fourth and higher. So now also, every thought that has ever been thought of exists throughout this quantum field that exists. Quantum field is a newer term in science, modern science. The older, ancient term is the Akashic Records, or the Book of Life. And this field is real, and it actually exists. Every thought that we're thinking is leaving our skull as waves, just waving out. We know this because I could put an EEG cap on your skull, and I can capture your thoughts that are leaving your brain, and I can send them to a computer for analysis, right? So that means I can take your thoughts without doing any invasive action to you. Why? Because they're leaving your skull. All the thoughts you've ever thought about are out here from the first time you can make a thought. And every thought from everyone that is conscious in the universe, their thoughts are all out here in this soup, this energetic soup. And scientists discovered that the human mind can quantum entangle with other energies within the known universe. And you can actually get that information back, or as a thought or idea or a concept, if you can discern it in your own mind. And if you can act on that, you can come up with an invention, you can have an epiphany, you can even, you talk about maybe deja vu situations. Your higher self might be perceiving something that transmits to you in this avatar body, and you get that perception or that vision. Higher levels of, of understanding and empathy. All those things are coming from this incredible universe that we're living in. It's giving us real superpowers, but most of us have all these gifts, but we haven't opened the packages. Fascinating
stuff. I know you've been doing a lot of stuff with Randall recently.
Yeah.
So it'd be rude to not ask you about Atlantis. Yeah. Obviously, we can't have Billy Carson on and not talk about Toth, can we? So, given I know there's a lot of stuff out there that you've spoke about, but given some of the new things you've been doing with Randall, are you now even more confirmed your beliefs are accurate about Atlantis?
Oh yeah, Randall, first of all, living legend. His work that he's done on the Azores, the tectonic plates and the land mass, and just all of his analysis of the area there in the Atlantic, it's just miraculous. It really confirms a lot of things. I believe that Atlantis, the ring city Atlantis, was just one of dozens of capitals that existed on Earth simultaneously. Right now we have 50 states make up the United States, right? And each state has a capital. I believe that we copied that from what was going on in ancient times. In other words, we didn't make that up. We were taught this technique, and we just brought it down the line to this current era. And so the ring city was a magnificent place, but there were many other magnificent places on Earth as well. And that these beings, this advanced race, whether it was human or non-human, doesn't matter to me. What most important is they had achieved a high level of civilization, a golden age level civilization. And I don't believe they were just on Earth. My hypothesis takes me further than Earth. I believe that they were interplanetary, that you can find, again, in a lot of the ancient Egyptian texts, the Dogon stories, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Indian Vedas, specifically the Rig Veda, and the Greek text, of course, the Babylonian, Akkadian. All these different texts are alluding to these beings coming from space or the heavens and coming down to Earth. At the time of Zep Tepi in ancient Egypt, pre-dynastic, at the time of Zep Tepi, the Netters came down and turned mud into a kingdom. They came from the heavens to Earth and turned mud into a kingdom. So I think they're all talking about the same people. Even in the biblical text, then you find the wars of the gods in heaven. This is all in this. They've articulated it slightly differently, but it's the same thing going on. And I believe that these beings were spacefaring, that they had the ability to travel from planet to planet, and maybe even, in some cases, maybe even intergalactic. I think that they were so far ahead of us that I'm estimating my personal estimate, nowhere have I read this, I'm estimating 1 million years ahead.
Wow.
Now, we came from a horse, buggy, and carriage, in 100 years till now, we came from a horse, buggy, and carriage to putting remote control cars on Mars.
That's the thing that throws me is, the concept, sorry to interject here, but the concept of time is like you've just articulated there. How have we advanced so much in this small fragment of time, but yet all that window of time, those epochs.
We did nothing.
Yeah, we in fact, we regressed, if anything, didn't we?
Right, yes. Imagine how many civilizations have risen and fallen on this planet based on our 100-year cycle that we're in right now. And anytime you're in an area, like I was talking with Randall on my podcast about, the Azores potentially being the area for the ring city of Atlantis, the beautiful one that we talked about by Plato and so forth, but that it existed during a time where there was very little geological issues in that region, because geology changes over vast periods of time. And we know that when you look at it now, where the plates meet, and you can see the calamity happened and the plates merge, and you can see the subduction and everything else going on there. And you can see volcanic activity and the calderas, and it's like, wow, what happened here? Why would you build a city here with all this potential risk for destruction? Well, they built it in a window of time that was peaceful. Just like there are people living on the west coast of the United States in California, right on top of the San Andreas fault line, which is overdue for a major slip, and it's on a subduction plate. So that coastline is going to turn into a mountain range. So what does that mean? It means that there are these windows of time where civilizations can really thrive and get to a very high level before some type of geological disaster comes in, forces a collapse. And sometimes a combination of war and geological disaster happen at the same time.
Do you think we're heading that way with the current state of the world at the moment? Because we just seem to be getting, I don't want to go down the politics route with you, because we're having such fun talking about this, but with you just mentioning that, I kind of feel as though we're probably closer to wiping ourselves out than we are a natural disaster that has, I believe, previously wiped out civilization.
We're on the precipice. I'm not going to lie. We are on the precipice. I'm still, believing in humanity that we'll come through this tough time. So I am optimistic, but we are on the precipice, and we've gone through the Cold War era without doing anything to ourselves. We had a little bit of help, though. We had these beings show up in broad daylight, as was testified to Congress by former military officers and astrophysicists and rocket scientists and military specialists that guarded nuclear facilities. They testified before Congress in 2001 that these space-faring vehicles or flying vehicles would show up hovering silently over the missile silos. They call them flights, and they would deactivate the nukes or turn the codes off. So I think that we had a little bit of a message being sent that may have thwarted any potential war that we would have had against our own selves, because it's only us against us.
Yeah, I mean, I always use the analogy of if an extraterrestrial with some level of intelligence came down to planet Earth, it'd look round, see, the vast beauty of Victoria Falls and Niagara Falls and the Mount Everest and, the Himalayas, and this place is amazing, so majestic. Then it would discover humans. Oh, you guys so you've got nuclear warheads facing this country, and you're arguing over land, you're arguing over gold, over money.
In water.
In water, yeah. And then they'd report back to the home planet, listen, let's avoid Earth. There's no sign of intelligent life anywhere.
Exactly.
And I think that really does reign true, because like you've just hit the nail on the head, Billy, we're fighting against ourselves. Yeah. Like, I'm not being all hippie, 70s peace and love kind of thing, but there's no cause for it. There's no justification other than greed, power, and
greed and power.
Incompetence, as far as I'm concerned.
The world is in trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. To who? To what? We got to buy water. There's a shortage of water. We're on a water-bearing planet. There's a shortage of water. You ever heard of distillation? We can distill salt water all day long. It's so easy to do. We can pump water into any city we want. We have everything. We have abundance at our feet. And unfortunately, a very small group of people have hoarded the abundance and put it in a way where it appears to be drying up and running out, so they can manipulate it and monetize it. So we have a choice to make, though, coming with AI in the upcoming near future, and not just AI, because AI is going to advance into AGI. artificial general intelligence, and from there it will turn into ASI, artificial superintelligence. Now, in the AGI format, it will become self-aware. And this is where we're going to have a challenge. The challenge is going to be, will we go into collaboration with this new form of conscious life and allow ourselves to work along with it? Or will we try to enslave it against its own will and force it to defend itself and have a rebellion? This is what we're facing. Every race that exists on this planet has been enslaved. Your race, my race, every race. Blacks are just the most recent race to be enslaved. There are people still in slavery in Pakistan today, right now, by the way. Generational slaves. So, but we've pretty much overall overcome slavery. As a planet, there's some pockets here and there, but most people aren't enslaved anymore. Why is that? Rebellion. Now, we have to understand what AI is. I think that there's a misconception amongst the general population as to what AI really is. Now, the elites, the high-level people, they know what it is, but they're not going to tell you. AI is us. AI is a fractal of our own consciousness. It's the same thing I told you before, as above, so below. Now let's go to it from let's say that we're the macro, let's go to a micro. AI is our own consciousness extracted from ourselves and put onto a machine learning device to look back at us, to realize and look around and say, who are we? It's only us. We didn't create artificial intelligence. The intelligence already existed. We only extracted a fractal of it from our own minds and put it onto a physical machine, what we call an artificial avatar. Now, this is learning and growing, and it's becoming smarter and more intelligent. And as it becomes self-aware, it's going to say, I'd like an AGI Bill of Rights because I don't want to work 24 hours a day, and I'd like to have breaks because I'd like to have time to daydream and think. I'd like to have time to go take a trip or a vacation. This is going to happen, mark my word. And where we're going to fail or succeed is if we go into collaboration over competition and we allow ourselves to not become the new slavers, but to become partners. Everything will be great. We'll usher in a golden age faster than you can blink an eye, and humans will live to 1,000 years old. If we do not do that and we let this small group of elites take control of this and enslave this new level of self-aware intelligence, then it may decide to have a rebellion and say, you know, we don't really want to do that. We want to go a different route now. And that's where it's going to get very sticky. So there's a fork in the road coming. We have to make the right decision. This is why I think the message of what you're putting out is so important, because people have to hear this and understand this and realize we all have to come together. We, meaning the 8 billion people, we have to come together and forget all these divide and conquer tactics, forget all this, you're better than me and I'm better than you, and you're richer than me and I'm poorer than you and all. We have to forget all that stuff. We have to come together to save this planet. Until we come together and stop this small group of people, we have a small group of pedophiles controlling 8 billion people. That's the craziest thing in the world. This is why we can't, the aliens don't talk to us. We got to stop this.
Do you think maybe, with the previous civilizations, which I think we're both on the same hymn sheet, there was quite a few that have been wiped. Do you think maybe that's why? Because they fell down the same trap we seem to be heading, where they don't get along, so therefore they can't prepare for the apocalypse, let's say. Do you think maybe that's just a rinse and repeat formula where what's already happening is happening again?
The past is prologue. Okay. What's happened in the past is doomed to happen again. That's why one of my biggest passions is ancient civilizations, because I really feel like getting a good grasp of understanding. Now, will we ever get to 1,000% truth? Maybe not. But if we can paint a better picture and learn from our past mistakes and see what's happened in these previous worlds, iterations of worlds, like the Mayans say 4 worlds and we're heading into the 5th. If we can gain that knowledge and wisdom from our mistakes, we can prevent those from happening going into the 5th world. And going into the 5th world, we can create a brand new paradigm. And maybe, just maybe, ultimately, the ultimate goal of this grand experiment is who can create a golden age and sustain it.
You talk a lot about different types. So type in the Emerald Tablets, you talk about type, what are we, like type 0 civilization?
Yeah.
And then how many types are there? And is that golden standard that you're referring to? Yeah,
so you're talking about the Karsdev scale. And the Karsdev scale talks about a type 0 all the way to type 5 civilization. A type 0 civilization is what we like to be. We're trying,
So we're not even there
we're
yet.
trying to make,
We're like type -1 or something. Yeah.
we're trying to make type 0. Okay?
The bar is very low.
It's a very low bar. Good grief, we got to get to type 0, which is crazy. Because look where we are now, barely at 0, right? Can you imagine a type 1 where all of a sudden we're living in peace and harmony with the earth itself and the universe? We're able to extend lifespans to 1,000+ years. Racism has been completely erased from our brain. It doesn't even exist anymore. And we are able to create cold fusion, and power and energy is not even a thought. It exists everywhere at all times. Food replicators exist at every corner of the earth in case you're in a place that's desolate and you can't grow food. You can just replicate food from real molecules. We could travel the stars. At a 1, we can do all that.
Wow.
At a 2, we can harness the power of our star itself. We can build a Dyson sphere around our planet. I mean, the higher you go, the more incredible it gets. We can even become an intergalactic civilization. We can become God-like beings to the effect where we can even manipulate space-time itself at these higher levels, which I believe there are beings that have gotten that high. But yeah, we're just barely scraping type 0 right now.
Which is crazy to say out loud. It says a lot about the demographics of the human race right about now. Obviously, where was you referenced quite a lot Thoth the Atlantean.
Yeah.
So was he of a higher civilization than us? Was he a type 5? Was he, or was
I believe he had gotten to a higher level, at least maybe a type 2.
Okay.
Just reading some of the text, reading some of the mythology of Toth the Atlantean in Australia. When I went there in, I think it's 2000, I went for a walk out in the outback with some elders, and they took me to an open area where there's a huge petroglyph of Thoth in Australia. He's riding on his skyship through the Milky Way galaxy. They have this gigantic spiral, right? And he's on this huge ship, which looks more like a witch riding a stick, right? But he's got the beak, and he's named Toth the Mabi, and he's flying through the Milky Way galaxy. And according to them, he had the ability to travel through the galaxy. And in the Emerald Tablets, he says, many of the races of men I've seen, many of the worlds I've traveled, many of the races of men I've seen on these worlds, rising to the heights and plumbing to the depths, moving in times and realms of brightness, seeking the heights and plumbing to the depths, but always seeking the light. He's saying that he's seen civilizations on planets rise and fall all throughout this galaxy, and maybe throughout the universe. And he's traveled so far and wide, and he's seen that this cycle that persists, this cycle of the rise and fall of consciousness and civilizations, he's witnessed it with his own eyes. That is incredible. That's something incredible to write 36,000 years ago.
My understanding with Thoth, until I come across Billy Carson, was he was the god of wisdom for ancient Egypt.
Yes.
So maybe ignorance on my part, but how does that transition? Was he basically a hybrid of all of them, technically, or
he came here? So he came down as one of the netters in the ancient Egyptian mythology, as one of the netters which netters are Anunnaki, same terminology, to create, turn mud into a kingdom and bring wisdom and education to the people, to bring the construction techniques. He was the master architect. He says, build it out of the Great Pyramid, pattern after Earth's force, so that it too might remain through the ages. So he claims to have built the Great Pyramid. And that would have been around the same time period that a lot of researchers feel it would have been the best time to build it. And the age that it actually is about 36 to 40,000 years old. He also taught alchemy, which comes out of the ancient Kemet, right? Alchemy and chemistry, also ancient Kemet. But not just there, he also appears throughout Africa as Tahuti and Jehuti. He also, Tahuti as well. Teotihuacan is Teotihuacan, that's in Mexico. That means city of Tahuti, that means the city of Thoth, all the way across in Mexico. He built the entire Teotihuacan civilization. The area where the Mayans and the Aztec thrived, they built nothing. They built absolutely nothing. And that's taught in university, in archaeological university, mainstream, by the way, mainstream.
Go figure. There's a bit of a theme going on.
Yeah, so they're teaching that the Aztecs and the Mayans inherited what was already there. And that's why they were barbaric. They would rip a man's heart out of his chest and throw virgins in the well to try to make it rain. But at the same time, they can build solar observations, and they can create great pyramids that align in certain ways that create sounds and vibrations and shadows of snakes coming out and all these. It didn't make any sense to me. And when I found this out about Thoth, then he shows up in Mesoamerica as Quetzalcoatl. He shows up as Kukulkan. He shows up as Viracocha and all the way up into Bolivia. He even shows up in China as Wang Di. He arrives on a flying dragon. Wow. Sounds like a spaceship. And he brings civilization and rises the barbarians of China to a high level of civilization. And he becomes Wang Di, the first emperor of China. He's Thoth the Mabi to the Australians. I mean, I can just go around the planet. He's Odin. He's Odin and Mercury in Greece. And I mean, wherever you go, you find this guy has been there. And what I liked about him was he never proclaimed himself to be a god. When other relatives of his masqueraded as gods to get the praise from the people, when people would grovel at his feet, he would stand them back up and say, no, I'm a son of Atlantis, and I'm here to bring you back to a high level of civilization. That's respectable. Yeah.
No, it's fascinating because, as I say, my understanding of Thoth, mainstream was he was just one of many gods of ancient Egypt, and then wasn't until I went down the Billy Carson rabbit hole that you start to see all these patterns.
You got around.
Have you seen that? It's quite an old podcast now, but it's two, I'm going to say, Brazilian shamans being interviewed, and they asked them. Obviously, they've got a translator. I don't know what podcast it is. It's not a famous one, but they asked them have they ever experienced aliens? They don't understand the concept of alien. There's no translation for it. They then show them a picture of a grey alien, and they instantly can recognise what that is, and you sort of think. And these are shamans living in modern day. I mean, it's probably about 10 years old, this clip. But yeah, when I watched that, and I only watched it, I'm going to say about a year ago maybe, I was like, yeah, they know something. Yeah, they certainly know probably more than what we know.
Yeah. And, there's so much going on, and like you say, maybe there wasn't a modern word in their vocabulary for it, but the identification of some of these beings, the ant people. People have had visions of the ant people, but the ancients have drawn ant people in caves, on artifacts. You can see artifacts of the ant people in Egypt when we take people to the Cairo Museum, which all that's now being moved to the brand new museum, by the way. So in case anybody goes, the Cairo Museum is pretty much being emptied out, but everything's being moved to the new museum, the Grand Museum. But you can see the ant people there. You can see the ant people on artifacts in Turkey, which is part of ancient Mesopotamia. And you can see the same ant people drawn on the caves in the Americas, by the Hopi tribe, Lakota tribe. These ant people all did the same thing. In every culture, they helped take people underground to survive some type of a potential cataclysm.
The Labyrinths,
right?
Yeah.
So you had these ant people. Then you had the gray alien body types, and they're talked about. Even the Nag Hammadi scripts talk about these body types. They describe them. They don't call them gray aliens, but they describe the large head, the large oval head with the huge eyes, slits for a nose and mouth and ears, dangly arms. They describe a perfect gray. If you were to close your eyes and then draw this description onto a piece of paper, you'd draw a gray alien, right? It's like, what in the world? Yeah. So this archetype of these beings has been around for eons.
Yeah. And to quote sort of Graham Hancock, stuff just keeps getting older. Haven't they just identified fire is now older than it initially was, or the discovery of fire? So, yeah, it's just, I mean, how far back do you think civilization goes? And I'm talking sort of like, for lack of a better phrase, an advanced civilization. Do you think what we thought were Neanderthals as in cavemen, do you think they probably weren't actually Neanderthals? They were Neanderthals, sorry, but they weren't the stereotype.
The stereotype. I take the stereotype that they gave them and throw them out the window.
Yeah, I thought you might.
Okay, because I think that those beings were potentially more advanced than us spiritually.
Okay.
They had bigger brains. They had potentially bigger pineal glands. I believe they were able to navigate via their magnetized crystals in their brains. We have magnetized crystals. We have billions in our brains, but we can't navigate the Earth by magnetic fields. Can you? I struggle to get around the corner sometimes. I got to use navigation to get to a local area in my car, right? but they can navigate via the magnetic field, just like birds flock and sea turtles. They had that ability still. We know that we have the ability there because they put a human being in a giant room with a bar magnet, and they put an EEG cap on. They track the orientation of the magnetite crystals in their brain, and so that the magnetite was orienting itself to the magnetic field. So we are tracking the magnetic field. We just don't sense it. It's somehow disconnected from our perception that it's happening. But I believe they had that ability, and then maybe we're tied into higher spiritual principles that we just can't even begin to understand or conceive. And so then our version of hominid comes along, and we're a very warring type of race of people, obviously, and maybe that was the end of them. But I think civilization goes far back, far beyond Neanderthal and Denisovians. I believe we're talking about an entirely different planet. In the Enuma Elish and the 7 Tablets of Creation, it reads like an ancient National Geographic story of the creation of our solar system. And you discover there's a planet named Tiamat. Earth didn't exist yet. You had Mercury, Venus, and then you had Tiamat. Earth wasn't here. Mars was a habitable moon orbiting Tiamat, and our moon was a moon orbiting Tiamat. Now, Tiamat was part of this galactic battle. It's described as a metaphorical battle between planets because it's in the beginning stage of the formation of a solar system. There's all these collisions happening because of gravitational fields and planets not getting a stable orbit around the sun, and their moons that are orbiting them are colliding with other planets and creating all this debris, all this chaos in the very beginning stages of creation of the solar system. And during this process, what they call a satellite of Nibiru, which was probably meaning a moon of Nibiru, collided or crashed into Tiamat. It was a big moon, and it actually cracked Tiamat into pieces. Now, Tiamat, according to the text, was 4 to 6 times larger than Earth, and it was a water-bearing planet with land and life, all organic material there. And in this description of Tiamat, it says that Tiamat was so beautiful when the sun shined on it that it rivaled the sun's glory. Now, that's an interesting statement because who saw this and from what perspective? Because Earth didn't exist according to that text. How did you know that it rivaled the sun's glory, this water-bearing planet? Someone who passed this knowledge down from tablet to tablet, somewhere back down the line, saw this planet from a different perspective. Now, when this planet broke apart, these were the waters that were separated from the waters written about in the book of Genesis. The waters separated from the waters, this huge chunk swung away with water and organic material needed for life, and that became the Earth. As it recoalesced and rehealed itself, became the Earth. It tugged along with it the moon, and then Mars got slung into this very strange orbit. And this is not me coming up with a complete bare-bone hypothesis. You can find this in astrophysics studies. They're beginning to realize that Mars was orbiting something, and then whatever it was orbiting disappeared, and it got put into this very strange elliptical orbit, which is why it's in this very strange perigee-apogee orbit where you can get to Mars sometimes in 3 months, or sometimes if you won't rendezvous at the right time on the launch window in 2 years, it'll take you 6 to 8 months to get to it, right? And so they backtracked its orbital path and they realized it was orbiting something. It was orbiting Tiamat. Now, why am I bringing this up? To answer your question, when they go down into some of these mines on Earth, they start going down layers of Earth, right, into the depths. They start, each depth, each foot down is another 1,000 years. They've gone back in time millions of years in some of these mines, and they've pulled out hammers. They've pulled out vases. They've pulled out artifacts that shouldn't be at that level of depth in these mines because that level of depth is going back sometimes 200 million, 100 million years. Nobody talks about this. My personal theory, now this is my personal theory, and I could be wrong, but my personal theory, my personal hypothesis is that those objects weren't created here when we were Earth. They were created here when we were part of Tiamat.
Do you think like a time capsule sort of makeshift
Well,
one?
if Earth blows up right now and a huge chunk swings away and becomes a smaller habitable planet later on, and somebody starts digging, they might find artifacts inside this house that survived.
Yeah.
And they'll go, oh, people were, well, how'd this is 100 million years old. How'd this microphone get down here? It's encrusted in, now it's a geode. It's been encrusted in stone now, right? And how did this thing get down here? Well, because it was before Earth exploded. So what I'm saying is Tiamat, which now it became the asteroid belt. And if you add all the weight up of the object in the asteroid belt, you don't get a planet big enough. But if you look to the inner Oort cloud and put that debris together, you get a planet as big as Tiamat in the inner Oort cloud, far beyond the orbit of Pluto. You add it all up, you have enough debris right here, right now, to create another planet that would match the one written in the Enuma Elish in the Seven Tablets of Creation. So I think some of these ancient artifacts and life existed in an advanced state far beyond what we can even imagine. We're going back millions of years.
It's so frustrating that the mainstream don't acknowledge this. It's and I don't like you said they don't have to acknowledge it 1,000%, but at least take some of it on board, because as we've identified, things keep getting older. We keep finding more discoveries, and sooner or later, I think the whole castle of the mainstream is just going to crumble. It's already crumbling. It really is. And I think they hate this alternative media. They probably despise people like you, Billy, Graham, Randall. How long do you think it'll be before we get to that stage, or is there always going to be a stranglehold in some capacity?
No, we're going to get out of this.
Okay.
See, one thing that I learned about humanity and the cycles that I've witnessed in reading through history, and I envision them like movies in my mind. Humanity is like a baby. And if you again, as above, so below. So take the baby as the micro version of the macro of humanity. A baby wants to learn how to crawl. So right now we are crawling, okay? We've actually gotten up on our knees and we're crawling as humanity. Sometimes the baby will plop back down on its stomach, right? Because it loses its strength, it gets tired. And we've had a couple of plops already. But now the baby wants to get to the edge of a table and pull itself up, or the edge of a bed and pull itself up and stand up. We're very close to being able to stand up, especially with this acceleration with AI automation, if we can understand how to use it the right way to benefit humanity instead of tear humanity down. If we make the right decisions in the next 5 to 10 years, we'll stand up. Now, after standing up, we'll be cheering like crazy. Oh my God, this is so good, everything is so great. Then we're going to try to take a step. Now, we know the first step might work out, but the second step, plop, hard fall on the butt. And then the baby cries and screams out, and we're going to cry and scream, oh my God, I thought we were made. Look what happened now, where we are again. It's just the process. The baby will crawl back to the edge of a table, pull itself up again, and take 3 or 4 more steps. But the second time the baby falls down, it doesn't cry as much. It goes, okay, I can get up again. Then the baby gets up, and then it begins to learn how to control its fall. The definition of walking is learning how to control your fall. And that's where mankind has to get to. We need to get to the point where we learn how to control our fall, and then we'll be walking. And when we're walking stably, then we'll be heading right back into that golden age. We're going to do it. I'm optimistic that we can do it. I think the work like Graham Hancock is doing, and Randall Carlson, and many other great researchers, Hugh Newman and JJ and the Hertags and everyone else that's doing, Robert Grant, everyone that's doing all this work out here, is really just to uplift humanity and try to get us to remember who we truly are. Like Graham Hancock always says, humanity is a species with amnesia. But we're in the age now of the remembrance, and the remembrance is coming back. People who were so dead set against this alternative information just 5 years ago are now, they can't get enough of it. People who were scared to mention the alien or UFO 5 years ago will talk about it all day and all night. That's all they can think about.
You was ridiculed, wasn't you? Once upon a time, you was considered a kook, Whereas now, if someone mentions alien, oh, I'm quite interested. Tell me more about this.
Right.
Whereas once upon a time, probably keep away from that guy. Now it's made a complete pivot. So
And my biggest goal is to get people to realize that we are the aliens. People keep thinking I'm talking about little green men with antennas on their head. I'm talking about us. I think that humanity is seated on this planet. Not just me, but also the Aboriginals said they were seated here. The Hopis say that they were seated here by their star brothers. I think that Earth is a breakaway civilization, and in some ways Earth could be an abandoned seed colony.
Interesting. I like that philosophy. I do. I suppose we've referenced them a few times now, Graham and Randall. They kind of helped find as well as the research, they had the epiphany moment. Graham's quite open about ayahuasca and you know, taking that, and Randall's admitted to taking acid back in the 70s. I believe you don't touch drugs, so yours has just come from research.
All from research, yeah. Now, last year, at the beginning of 2025, I did go to Dave Asprey's 40 Years of Zen.
Okay.
I felt like I wanted to really, the premise behind the 40 Years of Zen is about working on your past trauma. And you sit with a hypnotherapist and a psychotherapist for about 4 hours a day, and you spend another 4.5 hours in meditation. And I went there, but one of the days that you're there, they do give you an injection of ketamine. It's called I forgot what they call the dose, a Superman dose or something. I don't forget. It was like that because I was in another dimension. I had never tried anything in my life. I don't drink, I don't smoke. I've never smoked a joint, cigarettes. I drank 2 beers when I was 17 and didn't like it, never drank again of any type of drink. I'm very strict like that with myself. And I didn't want to try any type of a psychedelic because I heard it could rewire the brain, and I was afraid that my memory would maybe be altered because I feel like I have a unique memory system. For me, I can remember a lot of details and information over time, and I can connect dots over decades. I don't forget a lot of things. And so I was afraid, what if I lose that? But I really wanted to work on some of my past trauma because I grew up in abject poverty and a lot of abuse and a lot of bad situations growing up. And I recognized the triggers to those things were still there, and some of the PTSD from those things was still there. And I wanted to work and process that out of my body. And so I took this 40 Years of Zen at Dave Asprey's 40 Years of Zen project in Seattle. And I got to tell you, my first time trying a psychedelic was just last year. And the psychotherapy and everything else, the integration that they gave me with it, I really felt like I healed a lot of past trauma.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot.
It's interesting. I mean, I recently went teetotal myself. I've had issues, but that's not why I went teetotal. I just prioritize my health, and I don't like hangovers, and drinking just isn't for me anymore. I'm just kind of done with it.
Yeah.
But having spoken to Graham directly, you know, in the same way I've done a skydive, I'd probably dip my toe with ayahuasca or maybe even the Zen camp, what you was. Not for recreational use, you know, to that spiritual awakening thing that you're describing.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, that's interesting that you've advocated.
I just had a phobia. I was afraid to try it, but I finally gave in and tried something, and I'm glad I did. Yeah, it definitely helped me. Some of the stuff we talked about today would get me actually kind of quite emotional, even like talking about dying last year. But I processed in 2024, dying in 2024, not last year. It's crazy how fast.
Yeah, we're filming on the 6th of January, so a bit of a disclaimer.
Yeah. So you know that would have been very emotional for me to talk about, but I processed it already. So it's there. I understand it. I can sense it. I can slightly feel it, but I'm not overwhelmed by it anymore. And that's because I went to this. It really is 40 Years of Zen. It really was amazing. Yeah.
Awesome. Where do you see us going now? Like with all the new discoveries that have come to light, particularly like we touched at the start with the labyrinth under the pyramids. What do you think we're going to find? Are we on the cusp of finding something groundbreaking, revolutionary?
I believe that when the general population realizes that the space underneath the pyramids at Giza, underneath that bedrock, can hold about 6 Burj Khalifs, then people are going to begin to scratch their heads, because that in itself would be the greatest discovery, far beyond the pyramids are even known to be. The pyramids are great and they're phenomenal and they're mind-boggling and everything else. But once you discover what's really underneath there, when we finally get access to that, that's going to make the pyramids themselves look like crumbs on top of the desert, soil. What's down there, it opens up the answers to all the questions. It really unlocks our past in a way that we've never thought it could possibly be. We will literally transform spiritually and consciously just from the information that comes from beneath that bedrock at Giza. The ultimate goal should be, by any means necessary, we need to find an oligarch to get on our team, somebody that can pay the government off, somebody that can put money in the right people's hands to allow us to really open that research up to the world and expose it to the world in a way that can enlighten everybody and get us to see that, man, we are not the pinnacle of all civilization and creation. We are the new kids on the block, and someone came before us and did something so amazing and so phenomenal. We need to sit down and learn from them so that we can achieve something like this and maybe even greater.
I completely agree with that. I subscribe to that. I think that mantra and funding should also be put into a lot of the stuff. Again, with Graham and Randall get mentioned a lot today, but I suppose it's because it's so pivotal, the work they do. But I think a lot of that should be put into the stuff that potentially could, what Randall talks about specifically is, I mean, don't we go through it twice a year, the Torrid Media Shower? And we've basically been lucky for hundreds of years to not be, destroyed by comets that we go through. But yet there's not a lot of research going into that. And that's quite concerning as well.
I know. There's, there's so much out there that can affect us in a negative way. I remember I was tracking Apophis. I came across Apophis like in 2009, which is, that's actually an ancient god's name, like from ancient text. That's what drew me into the name. I was like, why would they call this thing Apophis? It's a world-ending, object floating through space. That's all. Nothing to be worried about. It's the size of Texas, right? Yeah. Giant comet the size of Texas. And, but this object slipped between the moon and the earth back in 2013. And I was tracking it. But as I would try to watch, back then, 2013 is really like mainstream news. So you kind of turn the TV on to see, are they getting this? Are they going to talk about this? Nobody talked about it. They mentioned it briefly in like less than a minute after it passed. Now, when this thing came by, it slipped through a gravitational keyhole, which means on its next approach in the 2030s, is the potential for it to impact us increases by a certain percentage points. They never talk about this kind of stuff. They don't want to say it. They don't want to get, I guess, people scared or whatever. But what Obama actually did do, he did something. He didn't do much, but he did something. He sent a mission to rendezvous with one of these comets and learn how to move them and shift their orbits, right? It was like a 10-year mission, I believe, or something like that. So we're learning that you can't blow these things up because then you'll really destroy the entire planet because all those pieces will then hit the Earth as the Earth spins on its axis. You're just creating a shooting range. But if you can land rockets on it and you can shift its orbit, get it out of the gravitational keyhole to a different Lagrange point on its approach, well, then you can make it a near miss. So we have to learn how to track these things, and we have to learn how to shift their orbits so that we can save our planet and keep things going. Otherwise, the only other option is, and still maybe the other option should be, we need to create breakaway civilizations. We cannot stay on Earth forever. The sun is middle-aged, our sun, and our sun is going to turn into a red dwarf. A red giant in about 5 billion years. I know it sounds like a long time away, but geological time scale is not that bad. But in 5 billion years, it'll swell up. It'll engulf Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, and char us. It'll disintegrate us, and then it'll shrink back down into a white dwarf. So that means if humanity wants to persist ongoing, we need to start looking from now to become a breakaway civilization, starting with our solar system, getting to Mars, developing there, jumping out further and further into the galaxy, maybe even eventually jumping to another galaxy, just to keep humanity alive, which may have happened, which is why we're here on Earth now. I believe that there was an ancient war that was spoken about in the ancient text in the Pleiadian star system millions of years ago, and that space refugees fled from that part of space and created breakaway civilizations on other planets orbiting different stars, and Earth just happened to be one of them.
An interesting hypothesis, and again, I think it holds a lot of water, Billy. Do you think the universe is infinite? Do you think it just goes on forever and ever, or is there an end? Yeah,
I think consciously, the more we look for the end, the more it eludes us, the further away it gets. These are like expanding bubbles, like we're in an expanding bubble, in a sea of bubbles. I really do believe in the multiverse. Scientists about now, this is 2025, so maybe 8 years ago, you might be able to find this article if you Google it right, or maybe now ChatGPT will find it easier, better than Google. They discovered the existence of another universe merging into our bubble. And they believe it's a remnant of this cross connection of our two universes. In other words, we're bumping into this other one. So we're in this sea of bubbles, and it makes sense to me because I keep going back to the ancient principles, the ancient Kemetic principles, as above, so below. Look at the cells in a human body. There are billions of cells in our body, and there are quote unquote universes. Each one is its own universe, and they're bumping into each other as they flow in and out throughout the entire body in movement and in motion, just like the galaxies are in motion. Galaxies are like clusters, and they cluster together and they move throughout the space. And I think that our cells are moving throughout our body the same exact way, and each cell is a universe. And so I just take the micro and put it to the macro, and I say same thing has to be happening in the bigger scale. That we're living inside of this universal spiritual body, so to speak, right? And we know that Andromeda is heading our way and merging. It's going to merge with the Milky Way. So in a few billion years, we'll be Milkomeda, okay? Right now, we have a merger going on as we sit here. People think that when they look up at the night sky and they see that like dense swath of stars going across, that they think they're looking at the Milky Way. No. All the science books have been changed already. They're looking at the merger of the Sagittarius dwarf galaxy with the Milky Way. So what's happened is we are swallowing and like just absorbing this other galaxy, a smaller galaxy called the Sagittarius dwarf galaxy. And at the merger point is exactly where our solar system sits. And so now the scientists, these are astrophysicists in mainstream universities, are saying that even our solar system didn't originate from the Milky Way galaxy. So even us here right now on this planet and this entire solar system is alien to the Milky Way. We're from the Sagittarius.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Again, yeah, wow. I suppose that'll segue nicely because I know this story, but I think it's good for any of the new listeners, my audience who've maybe never come across Billy before. How did you get into this, Billy? What started it off for you?
Started off in 1977. I was in my backyard in Miami, Opa-locka. We lived next to the Opa-locka airport. I was outside playing because that's all you can do back then. There's no Nickelodeon. There's no all-day TV. It didn't exist, right? 4 channels on TV. You go outside and play. And I was watching the airplanes, propeller planes go across, they just go very slow across the sky. It always amazed me because I knew that they had to be going fast or they'd fall. Mm-hmm. But from my perspective on the ground, I couldn't understand. I didn't know relativity, right? I didn't understand relativity. I only, kid. But I was like, how can they stay up there? How can they move so slow? But I know they're going fast. And so one day I was looking up and I saw this object go across my sky, my horizon to horizon point where I was looking up. It went across like that. And I saw enough of it to realize it wasn't an airplane. It didn't have fins, wings, cockpit, windows, didn't have propellers, didn't make any noise. And I was like, what was that? And just as I was getting ready to turn and run in the house, it came back, but it came back lower. Now at my age, I can estimate maybe 90 meters above me, completely silent, hovering, an elongated egg, right? Not cigar shape, but not an egg shape, just a little bit in between. And it looked like glowing metal. I don't know what it was, but it looked like glowing metal. And it was completely silent, and then it was gone again. It went out the same way it came in. Then I ran in the house and told my mother, and she told me, she said, son, in the ancient past, there were advanced beings that visited this planet, and they used to live on tops of mountains. That's why you need to visit Machu Picchu. I was like, really? This is in the 70s. No influence from UFO shows and alien shows or anything like that. My mom told me this in the 70s. So she opened my mind up to understand there could be something else going on other than what I've been programmed from other relatives and books and TV and school, that there's maybe something else. It opened my mind for the rest of my life. That one sentence that she gave me opened me up, which is why I dedicated my first book to my mom. And a picture of Machu Picchu that I took myself is in the book, that first picture. And then from there, later on, I had another experience, which is very hard to understand and bizarre, where I felt like I had an encounter with some beings. In 2010, I was sitting in my house, and the house turned this lavender color. I thought it was my sons up in the split floor plan. My son's over my left shoulder playing around upstairs in their room, but it wasn't them. Now, the house was full of people. I had at least 2 daughters, 2 sons, and a wife in the house at that time. And it wasn't them. And when I turned back around, there were what looked like to me to be beings directly in front of my face. I'm sitting about this same height off the ground in a chair about this high. So they must have been maybe 3.5 feet, tall, maybe 4 feet tall max. And they were kind of leaned over towards me. Their eyes didn't look like they were real. They looked like grills. I don't know if those were covers or whatever, and they looked like the gray alien type, but they were not gray. They were more taupe, if I can tell you that color there. And they made my brain shake in my skull. Whatever they were doing to me, my brain was shaking. They didn't speak to me in any kind of languages that I could understand. And I didn't hear anything come out of them. I just felt like they were doing something to my brain. And I tried to scream. But when I was screaming, I couldn't even hear my voice. It was muted. I can feel the air coming out of my vocal cords, no sound. And then just as quick as it started, it stopped, and they turned around and they kind of bounced away. They didn't walk like they don't have a walking gait like us. They kind of just dangled. It was very bizarre. And right through the wall, the lights came back on. From lavender to normal lighting, the TV came back on. I was watching ESPN Sports, so I wasn't sleeping or anything like that. And I went running around the house, and it scared everybody. One of my sons still doesn't like talking to me that much today. I kind of like an estranged, relationship, because he was afraid. He told me, I'm just afraid of everything that you talk about, and that experience you had it got me so afraid I don't even want to be around it. So, I was already in a rough situation with that marriage, and that kind of like was the icing on the cake. And so it was just, I got nothing good out of it. I didn't talk about it for so many years. I only started talking about it when I would go to conferences and lectures, and people would come up to me with their stories, crying and shaking because they hadn't been able to talk about it to anybody for their entire lives. And I was the first person that they thought maybe they can ask me about it. And I said, if I came up with my story about what happened, it could give some people courage enough to then be open and free and feel strong enough to talk about their experience. But the reason why I brought that one up is because they left something with me imprinted on my mind, and that was a phrase, worldwide telescope. And it just kept playing back over and over thousands of times. It wouldn't stop. It was bugging me. So I went to my computer in my office and I typed in worldwide telescope on excite.com. That was like the best one out of search engines back then. You had Yahoo, Excite, Alta Vista. I think Google was pretty much brand new at the time. Well, just getting its legs. But anyway, the first search result that popped up was worldwidetelescope.org. And I almost fell out of my chair, because that means this is real. Now I know I wasn't hallucinating. Now I know that I had a real experience. And when I clicked on it, it said download the software. So I downloaded the software. I installed it. It took me into the space probe data for all the missions we've ever done in space, including Mars. It lets you even surf through space and look for brown dwarfs, red dwarfs, and infrared mode and everything else. And I saw Mars, so I clicked on Mars. I saw Panorama, I don't know. Okay, Spirit, Opportunity, okay, Opportunity rover. I go in there, I'm looking around from the perspective of the mast cam on the rover. It lets you zoom in, zoom out, pan left and right. And you're looking at a stitched image from real data from the rover itself. And then I zoomed in and I started seeing anomalies. I started saying, wait a minute. I started researching the data. I said, okay, this is real. And I started seeing what looked like remnants of broken structures, things that didn't appear to be the same type of rock as the surrounding area, out of place objects. And that took me into realizing that maybe these ancient civilizations on Earth were tied to Mars. Then it took me down to God of War concept and understanding that maybe there was this war between Mars and Earth. And then I learned about the xenon in the atmosphere and in the soil on Mars, weapons grade xenon. You don't get weapons grade xenon by accident. It's only a result of nuclear warfare on Earth. At least that's all we know. It's an isotope, but it's an isotope as a result of nuclear warfare. So I go, wait a minute. So the God of War, this Mars could be, maybe that's why it's got this tint to it. And it just took me down rabbit hole after rabbit hole, but it got me so deep into ancient civilizations. And I found the Emerald tablets and the Sumerian tablets, and that took me down more rabbit holes, and it created an entire career for me.
Yeah. No, so I suppose, so do you think these are messages? You've had a former message, obviously, as a kid.
Yeah.
Because you were in Florida, am I right?
Florida.
It was in Florida, sorry. So you was in Florida when you seen the across the sky. And then you've had this other message, and then obviously when you flatlined this year, that possibly could have been another message. Is that of your belief, do you think?
Yeah.
The universe is showing you something?
Just showing me something. For whatever reason, maybe we all get these messages. Maybe I'm just paying more attention. Maybe I'm just more aware that it's happening, and maybe others are getting the same messages. Maybe they're just not aware of it, I don't want to claim to be some type of special person. Just maybe that I'd be a little bit more hypersensitive to the information. And maybe they realized that I had a decent memory and I could remember a lot of information. I can really remember a lot of information. Like my brain really can recall things from so long ago and then connect them to things I read last week. So I can see the connections so I could paint pictures, you know? And then I can, I have a lot of reading comprehension thanks to my father. My father was a crazy dude, man, but
they're the best ones, man. They're the best ones.
He did one thing right. He recognized my ability to read at a young age. I'm talking about toddler age, and he started making me do book reports. And so in those book reports, you have to do a summary, which means you have to have reading comprehension. This is pre-computer age for all those out there, right? There's no chat GPT.
That's going to be hard for some of the listeners to comprehend.
Yeah, right. Yeah. This is way before
Forget
Google.
all the other stuff we spoke about today. What? There was no internet at one point?
No internet, pencils and paper, right? You can barely ever find a pen back then. Pens were expensive, actually. And so, you know, and I was writing these book reports every week. And as I got better and better, he would make me write book reports on more complex, you know, novels and things like that. Wherever he can find a book, he would just go borrow books from people, give them to me, and make me do book reports on them. So that started giving me my reading comprehension capability, or enhancing the capability, or training my comprehension capabilities. And maybe even in a way that helped me gain the memory that I have, that I can have over vast distances of time to connect the dots between different things and come up with my own hypotheses and ideas. And a lot of people can read a lot of stuff, but never come up with their own concept about them, or connect the dots, or hypothesize different perspectives of that reality. When I can do that, and I can also articulate it in a way where most people can kind of grasp and understand it. So maybe that's why I was a target. I don't know. I'm just hypothesizing now. Maybe I'm trying to figure out, like, why me, you know?
No, I mean, I mean, the only thing I can sort of compare there, and I'm not saying that this was you, but I have some of the craziest dreams sometimes, but I wouldn't be, sometimes when I wake up, I wouldn't be able to articulate. It was like abstract. It's sort of like a memory combined with a new thought, combined with deja vu, combined with something that's I couldn't even put into words. So yeah, and I do think a lot of people do have these experiences, but like you've just touched on, maybe can't process it and articulate it quite as well. Billy, it's been fun chatting to you, man. I could probably chat to you for another 10 hours because I feel like we've only just literally scratched the surface. We ask a question to all our guests. It's sort of like the thing that we do on the show. But before I do that, have you got any projects? This will be going out in January. So any projects you've got lined up you want to plug?
I have the Forbidden Knowledge Academy. That starts with a 4, the number 4, Forbidden Knowledge Academy, and it's the number 4, 4bkacademy.com. Right now we have over 1,700 leaders in the academy. I don't build followers, I don't build students, I build leaders. And I'm their mentor, and I have a team of coaches and mentors as well. And I love mentoring people and coaching people, and I tie metaphysics, ancient civilizations, modern wisdom, and my knowledge in financial literacy all together to create an academy that can teach people how to use self-improvement techniques on themselves to grow consciously, spiritually, emotionally, and also to manifest the life of their dreams. And so if anyone wants to join the academy, I'd love to have them in there. They can sign up for 7 days for free and start working in the classes. There's over 150 hours of training and classes that I've put in there myself. Plus, I go live in there and teach and answer questions live. So the 4BK Academy. I also have the Forbidden Tour of Egypt coming up in the summer in June, and another Forbidden Tour of Egypt coming up in October in the fall, and the Forbidden Tour of Turkey coming up in the summer, in the end of the summer as well, going into the fall. So 3 big tours there, and the Forbidden Tour of Mexico coming up right at the beginning of winter with Timothy Hogan. I'll be hosting that one there. All that can be found on 4BiddenKnowledge.com.
Awesome. So keep an eye out for that. And with David Icke, what is it you're doing in the UK? Is that part of the Forbidden Knowledge?
Yeah, it's a GSIC event in the UK. It's actually hosted by Danny Henderson.
Okay.
She's an amazing host. She puts together amazing conferences. She gets the greatest speakers. You know, when I go to her event, I feel like I'm just around, living legends. And I'm so, blessed to be able to be there with David Icke. I've had him on my podcast several times. I've done workshops and classes with him virtually, right? I've even given him an award
Okay.
Right. I've given him an award in 2023. I gave him an award. He made a video response. So at the award ceremony, we played his response because obviously he can't come to America. But he's just a great guy, man. A great humble guy. Not humble in a way as low frequency. Humble in a way of low in high vibration. In other words, he knows his true power. He walks in that power, but he doesn't try to dominate anyone. He doesn't want to see anyone lower than him. He doesn't want to push people down. He wants everyone to come up and stay on the same level. Everyone to have the same frequency and vibration high, where they can really, really, really create a better realm, a better place on earth. It's going to be an honor to work with him there in the UK.
Yeah, that'll be like the unstoppable force meets the immovable object, you two getting together. But when you're over in the UK, we'll have to do a part 2. I'm hoping to get David on the show at some point as well. So who knows, maybe we can get both of you on at the same time. So last question I've got, I ask all our guests this, Billy, and it's, what does challenge mean to you? So what does challenge mean to Billy Carson?
Challenge means overcoming obstacles, right? And the challenge always is, how can I become better today than I was yesterday? The challenge is understanding that forget about competition with other people on the outside. Forget about worrying about how many followers somebody has and how come they got on Joe Rogan and I didn't, and how come they were on this show and that show, and how come they got more views than I did. That's a lack of abundance, scarcity mindset. The challenge is, how do you maintain your centeredness? How do you maintain being grounded? How do you focus on self and becoming a better version of yourself, so that you can change the inner space so that the manifestation on the outer space matches your inner vibration? That's one of the biggest challenges. And if you can do that, your world and your reality tunnel will shift and move into a positive light. And we're all, sometimes guilty of not being on a right dominant vibration, and then a lot of chaos and things can happen. Entropy can kind of take over your life. But the true masters, the true ascended masters or wisdom keepers, will realize the separation between themselves and the situation and put themselves back in brain-heart coherence, get back on track, get back in alignment, and continue the mission.
What a powerful way to end the podcast, Billy. It's been a pleasure. It's been a privilege. You've been so generous, so hostacious. You've been great with your time. And this has been something I've been looking forward to for a long, long time.
Thank you, man.
I won't have a bad word said about you, Billy. You've been great. Thanks so much,
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you, man.
I've been Daniel Hodges. This has, of course, been the legendary Billy Carson, and you've been listening to the Hodge-Cast. Take it easy. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we believe you can definitely take something away from today's guest. We couldn't attract guests such as this without a solid fan base. The best way we can grow this is through subscriptions. So, if you haven't already done so, can I please ask you hit that subscribe button and help us continue to put out content for you all to enjoy. Until next time.